In this episode of Overcoming Addiction, I'm going to continue in my series on completing the recovery process. Because of the complexities involved with these new synthetic drugs, the process of recovery will be just as complex. New forms of treatment for drugs such as fentanyl and tranq will have to be formatted. The evolving landscape of substance abuse involving these new and potent drugs demand innovative and extended treatment approaches. In this episode titled The Mental Health Treatment Phase, we're going to talk about how substance abuse impacts the senses. Many who struggle with it are not only being attacked physically but mentally as well. Anyone who has suffered a physical trauma knows how much mental stress that trauma can generate.
So today I'm going to talk about completing the recovery process, and this is the second part of this series. Now, in the first part of the series, I introduced the three phases on which I want to touch on, and they are the mental, the physical, and the spiritual phase. And I wanted to bring this up because with the new drugs that are out there in our streets today, I think the treatments will have to be more extensive or be tailored more for the impact that these new drugs were going to have on substance abusers. So in the first video, I focused mainly on the physical health treatment phase, and I gave all of the my thoughts on how that should go. So if you would like to go back and watch the video. In this video, I'm going to talk about the mental health treatment phase. So, and as I said, these are my thoughts on how the treatment phases should be improved or tailored. Healing from substance abuse will require three areas of treatment. Like I said, it will be physical, mental, and spiritual. No one can successfully recover from substance abuse unless there is treatment for them in those three areas. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about the mental health treatment phase. And in this phase of treatment, I'm going to talk about the psychological impact of substance abuse, including therapy for trauma, anxiety, and depression, which often accompany physical health issues. So these mental health issues often accompany the physical health issues and, in fact, have an impact on the physical health issues. We'll probably explain a little bit more about this a little later. Because substance abuse also impacts the senses, many who struggle with it are not only being attacked physically, but mentally as well. Anyone who has suffered a physical trauma knows how much mental stress that trauma can generate. The same can be said for someone struggling with substance abuse. The trauma of substance abuse can manifest in numerous ways, including anxiety, depression, and other mental health disorders. With the introduction of these new synthetic drugs, an innovative approach is needed to address the intense psychological impact these and future synthetic drugs will have. Getting through the extended physical treatment phase may have been challenging, but combating the impact addiction has on the mind is a greater challenge. That's because this challenge incorporates physical and psychological challenges. Habit forming drugs impact the brain's chemistry, resulting in intense cravings and withdrawal symptoms that can be difficult to manage. Additionally, the psychological impact, such as feelings of guilt, shame, and hopelessness, can be overwhelming. And the new synthetic drugs are designed to be more addictive. Synthetic drugs like fentanyl and tranq are engineered to be highly addictive, often by aggressively targeting the brain's reward system. Now, this makes breaking the habit incredibly difficult, as the levels of cravings and withdrawal symptoms are intensified. In most cases, these extreme alterations in brain chemistry can lead to long-term changes in behavior, mood, and cognitive function. Addressing this level of addiction requires a multifaceted approach combining medical and psychological treatment along with social support. It is at this junction of the treatment process where many may struggle. I know I had that problem at this junction. There were many periods during my addiction where I was able to make it through the physical pains of withdrawal from drugs, but not the psychological attraction. Part of the psychological attraction was the allure of the purchasing process. During my addiction, there was always a challenge of coming up with the money to buy drugs, even when I was employed or had an income. During my periods of unemployment, my primary thoughts were, how do I get money to buy drugs? There were times when I had to take some risks that involved various schemes. Anyone that has used drugs know what I'm talking about. Coming up with the money was like a pre-high for me. Next, it was finding the drugs. Now, many times this was an adventure because I was always looking for the best product, which meant I might not always shop at the same location, and I had no car of my own, so that meant I had to come up with schemes to get to the drug spots. And then there was the possibility of purchasing drugs of low quality or even fake drugs. And there was always the possibility of being caught by law enforcement in possession of a controlled substance. Now, there was a tremendous amount of pressure on me just to carry out this process daily. And I talk about this in my second book called The Pressures of Addiction, Finding a Way Out. Although there was a lot of pressure, there was also a great sense of gratification every time I completed the process successfully. This process in itself becomes part of the addiction. This process of coming up with the money, finding the drugs, finding the right drugs, making it home safely with the drugs is part of the gratification that goes along with the addiction. It took me a couple of months after my treatment for addiction to purge my mind of that sense of gratification. The mind is the toughest battleground for someone involved in any kind of emotional conflict, and substance abuse is an emotional conflict. When it's just you and your thoughts, the battle is a lonely one. It's a tough battle, but with the right resources and support, recovery is possible. Now, I have some activities here that I want to share that can help with recovery from the mental attraction that comes along with the process of addiction. So, here are my suggested activities to address to help you complete the recovery process. First, intensive therapy and counseling to address underlying issues and develop coping strategies. Underlying issues could be anything. They could be physical, like the ones I talked about in the last video, or they could be emotional. they such as stress and depression, like I talked about a little while ago. So intensive therapy and counseling and extensive therapy and counseling, which is what I'm suggesting because of these new drugs. Another one is gradual reintroduction to daily life with continuous support and monitoring. Monitoring means if for some that might mean going to a support group meeting or having a support person in your family or a close friend that might support that helps them to they will be there to monitor you and in case because a lot of us that struggle with abuse, if we're starting to slip and we're starting to fall, we may not say anything. So having someone that's trusted to monitor you is helpful. And being reintroduced into daily life, substance abuse free, is very important. Another one is, like I mentioned, ongoing support groups, therapy sessions, and check ins to prevent relapse. I just talked about that. Another one is combining physical and mental health treatments to address all aspects of substance abuse. Talked about that a little while ago also. Providing therapy that recognizes and addresses the trauma associated with substance abuse. There is trauma associated with substance abuse. There can be physical trauma. There can be mental trauma. We're going to talk about spiritual trauma in the next video. But trauma is accompanies any kind of abuse, any kind of damage to the body, to the brain. There's some trauma, and sometimes they have to be addressed separately, separate from the substance abuse. Incorporating mindfulness practices, meditation, and stress reduction techniques to help individuals manage the mental strain of recovery. There is a mental strain when it comes down to recovery because you're going to be challenged every day. Every day, the enemy will be out there looking to draw you back into it. That's the challenge. So you need to come up with some ways to combat that, to counter that. For me, prayer and meditation helped. It helped greatly. And it might be different for anyone else, but always find some practice that can take you away from the strain of recovery. Of course, building a strong network of family and friends. And with the introduction of new synthetic drugs, these kinds of therapy will need to become even more extensive than they currently are. Intensive, long-term substance abuse will require intensive, long-term treatment. And with these new drugs, tranq and fentanyl, the abuse that is accompanied by them is more intense. I can safely say it is more intense than the substances I was taking when I was using drugs. And all I used was pretty much heroin and Xanax. These are much more intense. It's a challenging journey, but with the right support and treatment, recovery is possible. In the next video, I'm going to talk about a critical area of treatment, which is the extended spiritual health treatment phase. This is the most important area because it will cement the first two and prepare the one recovering on the road to a fulfilling life after recovery. It's where one is reintroduced to their purpose or where they will find a new purpose, which is what I did. Recovery is one thing. Finding a purpose after recovery is another. It keeps you, and simply said, it keeps you sober. It keeps you occupied. It keeps you in a place where you're looking to find ways to continue to recover. You don't recover and then stop. For me, it's a continuous process. Everything I do have done moving forward been since I left a treatment program is a continuous process of my recovery. That's why I write the books that I wrote and I do this YouTube channel. So come back for part three. Part three is the most important one. They're all important, but this one will connect you to the true source of strength after recovery. So I'll see you guys next time.
The two books I have written, The Effective Use of Spiritual Tools and The Pressures of Addiction, Finding a Way Out, detail my struggles with substance abuse and the tools that I use to overcome my addiction. If you know someone who is struggling with substance abuse, their contact information is posted here and they can contact me or the publishing company. Feel free to share this information with your friends and family. And again, there is a way out.